The Cincinnati Bengals. What a fascinating team. I didn't get down there to Cincinnati at all this past season. Usually we get there 2 or 3 times a year for different features. The Orlando Brown story comes to mind. Man, he just cracked me up, had me howling. His stories were next level. Holy shit. If you can, check that out. The Son of Zeus. But yeah, the Bengals. They seem to start every year terribly. I thought that Paul Danner Jr. of The Athletic on this show put it best when he said they tend to, quote unquote, tackle like ass in September and October. So how do you fix that? While you may lose the one apex predator that you have on this defense, that was basically a basket of kittens last year, while you're paying Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase all of that money, 44% of your cap on an annual basis, tied up into 3 players. The memes were out in full force. And that doesn't even begin to tell the story of this current moment for the Bengals. If you missed it, Kate Blackburn, speaking at the owners' meeting, was pretty blunt in the stadium problems that they're having. We'll pull up the details here so we're not speaking out of turn. So this is right from our story. Katie Blackburn, she's the executive VP for these Bengals. She told reporters that June 30th deadline is approaching fast, and they've got to exercise, and that's by then they have to exercise the first of 5 2-year rolling extensions at Paycor Stadium at the Banks in downtown Cincinnati. So if we've learned anything, this can get really contentious. A day later, Hamilton County fired back and kind of put the onus on the Bengals. And then you got the Trey Hendrickson situation where Katie Blackburn tells reporters that the edge rusher, quote, should be happy at certain rates that maybe he doesn't think he'd be happy at. Hendrickson goes and runs off to Pat McAfee and unleashes his frustrations. A strange time for the Cincinnati Bengals right now. But I really do think this team is led by the right coach in Zac Taylor. It was really fascinating to sit there right by the head coach for nearly an hour and just kind of see how he answered a lot of these hard questions when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, when it comes to the defense, paying these 3 players. How do you evolve offensively? How do you evolve internally? They're changing a ton behind the scenes in the offseason in terms of players just speaking in front of the entire team, talk X's and O's, to share their journey. They got to somehow build better chemistry, better camaraderie, do whatever they can to start a season a hell of a lot faster than they've been starting these seasons. That's been a problem for Zac Taylor and the Bengals. And it is a catch-22, really, when it comes to the physicality and tackling. They tackle terribly, as noted. Can picture Geno Stone struggling in the open field to bring anybody down. But there's also a reason they finish really strong, right? Like at the end of these seasons, the Bengals are hot and healthy and feeling good, where some other teams are maybe beat to hell because they have been junction boys in practice behind the scenes. I mean, I know the Packers and the Lions, they hit, they go after it in practice. So where is that line? Zac Taylor's trying to find it, and he sounded really open to changing some things up. Now they can't bring players to the ground and tackling drills, right? This Norman, Oklahoma native can't line up the Oklahoma drill. But he did kind of say a few interesting things. For one, they're going to play starters in the preseason more. So they're not just snapping a finger and it's week 1. You're playing the Patriots and you lose to a team like the Patriots. So that should help. Where's the personnel help coming? I think going down there to West Palm, I was pretty skeptical myself, like you probably were. If you paid any attention to the Bengals defense last year, you pay those 3 players. You can't necessarily go sign a Milton Williams for $100 million. But I thought that Taylor made some really good points. They're going to be counting on a couple of top 100 picks from the last draft contributing on this year's defense. Chris Jenkins, number 49 overall. McKinley Jackson, number 897. Now, here's 2 players you drafted pretty high last year. One, Jenkins starts the season with a club on his hand. Jackson, the other, had a sprained knee. He missed 4 games. So that helps. I think getting TJ Slayton in the middle of the defense is an upgrade over Sheldon Rankins. Joseph Osai of AFC Championship game at Arrowhead infamy actually played pretty well for stretches last year. Maybe he gives you some pop on the opposite edge of Hendrickson, who, as contentious as it is right now, I don't know. We've seen how these things go. Where there's a will, there's a way. It sounds like Hendrickson would love to be a Bengal if the Bengals just showed a little love back. They don't have a lot of money to spend, but if Mike Brown, if Katie Blackburn, if they're willing to get tied up into a little dead money, as we've seen, most deals can find a way to get done. So getting him back is obviously huge. And I like some of the players I have in the secondary. Cam Taylor Britt, him and Lou Anarumo had their issues. Maybe a new defensive coordinator helps. And maybe that's where you draw your most hope if you're the Bengals defensively. Al Golden coming in as the defensive coordinator. Mostly remember him for coaching the Miami Hurricanes, but that was a long time ago. Since then, he actually was with Cincinnati and Zac Taylor for a brief time, went to Notre Dame. And if you look at those Notre Dame defenses, fundamentally, were just a really good tackling team. And they led the nation in takeaways with 33. I think they had 6 defensive touchdowns. Sometimes we make football out to be a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And we can thank the likes of, Brian Flores for this, who's running all these exotic blitzes and coverages. And it was fun to kind of learn all that in Minnesota last season. But for the Bengals, it's not about getting overly exotic and trying to confuse quarterbacks. They just need to tackle. Like, a 7-yard gain can't turn into a 47-yard gain. That was their problem last season. Al Golden should help with that. I can see a path toward competency for the Bengals defense. That's all you really need when you've got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and an offense that is going to slam the gas pedal from the word go. And I think that probably that would get me the most excited about the Bengals for the simple fact that, like, they're not going to masquerade as the Philadelphia Eagles. They're not going to watch that Super Bowl, see that the Eagles just, you know, kick the Chiefs' teeth in and think, oh, we need to do that. So we're going to do something drastic and try to change our identity. No, they know that their thing is scoring 30, 40 points. So whatever it took to get to that place, to bring Chase back, to bring Higgins back, yeah, you would ideally do all of that a year ago so you can have some of that money to spend on the defense, but they got it done. And honestly, I don't even care how much it was. You want those two players at the wide receiver position. And even Mike Gesicki gives you 3 weapons for Joe Burrow. And they're just going to come out guns a-blazing as often as they possibly can. Here's Zac Taylor, quote, "We want to walk on the field and teams to feel us offensively. We want them to feel like this is going to be a long day for us." And I think if you go out there and play remotely close or even better than you did offensively, he does think that Joe Burrow has another gear. I mean, threw for 5,000 yards and 43 touchdowns. This is a scary offense, and I think there are a lot of teams that struggle identity wise and don't even know what they want to be offensively, defensively. There's no such confusion in Cincinnati. They've got an offensive minded coach who is going to be an aggressive play caller. We profiled Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, described as a quote unquote genius. I mean, he can push Burrow intellectually in ways most coaches cannot. I love everything going on there in Cincinnati. I think that the Bengals, uh, with or without Trey Hendrickson, start fast, win the AFC North. I mean, if you really think that Aaron Rodgers is going to save the Pittsburgh Steelers, yeah, just good luck with that. The Ravens, top to bottom, might have had the best roster last season. So they could be a problem. They could always be a problem. They don't really have a lot of needs. But I don't know. I mean, give me Burrow over Lamar Jackson in those playoff games. I just feel like his brain is unlike any brain in the sport. If they can get something out of Chase Brown with the run game, if Lucas Patrick can give him something, they picked him up on the cheap. They had to go thrifting, right? They panhandling, not even thrifting. They're panhandling to fix their needs, whether it's offensive line or defense. I don't care. I mean, it's a quarterback. It's a quarterback's world. They may have the best in the business and coaches who get him. And with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins lined up, Zac Taylor got into this as well. Just what a number one receiver does to a defense. And hey, I think that the Bills, everyone eats philosophy is more than just a cliche. It worked for the Bills, right? 30 rushing touchdowns, 30 passing touchdowns. It works for the Packers to an extent. But, Taylor as the play caller, he got into this. He can see how defensive coordinators struggle to defend both Chase and Higgins. Do you bracket help over Jamar Chase and leave Higgins one-on-one? We've seen him burn that one-on-one coverage. Do you say, okay, we're going to take our best corner. We're going to take, I don't know, pick whoever you want. Christian Benford, if you're the Bills. And we're going to put him on Chase, and we're going to double Higgins. Well, I think the Bengals still like Chase one-on-one against just about any cornerback they're going to face in the NFL. Do you blitz? Joe Burrow's probably going to pick up that blitz and make you pay. It's a lose situation if you're the defense. The Bengals' problem last year was their own defense, which was atrocious. There were a lot of reasons to go into it. I don't think that Lou Anarumo just became a bad defensive coach overnight. We'll see what he can do in Indianapolis as their DC, and they made a lot of aggressive moves in free agency themselves. But there was a resistance, I think, from Lou to play young guys, first and second year players. Just there wasn't a trust level there, and you can't be afraid to play those young players. That's a good lesson to take from the Eagles. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, two DBs selected, by the way, in the same range as the Bengals' first two picks this draft. I mean, you can draft a player in the first round and the second round defensively and go from a playoff one and done team to a Super Bowl champ. The Eagles just did it. They had the worst pass defense in the NFL, then they had the best. So these turnarounds are really possible. And oh, by the way, they changed their defensive coordinator over the same offseason. So I just think you have to be willing to play those young players. The Bengals weren't. They kind of relied on some old crusty vets, like Sheldon Rankins. Looked like he didn't even want to be on the field, didn't really want to play at this point for the Bengals. If you're willing to kind of go through those growing pains in September, it's worth it for the payoff in January. Remember with the Eagles, it took a little while for that defense to get going. I believe they were like 2-2 at one point, had some hard conversations at the bye. They got blown out by Tampa, which was kind of a replay of the playoff game that they lost to Tampa. But then DeJean gets in there, his role grows, and things got humming. Now, I'm not comparing the Bengals defense to the Eagles by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that you can turn things around defensively in the NFL, and it can go the other way too. It's hard to sustain a top 5 defense. I mean, the Cleveland Browns had the number 1 defense in 2023. I'm sorry, 2023. We went down there to Cleveland. We talked to some of those players. Juan Thornhill. They're breaking down Jim Schwartz's defense, how they're going to punch you in the mouth, and all that good stuff. And they took this major step back. Think back to Saxonville, those Jags that were, one phantom whistle from an official, the Miles Jack play. He wasn't down. They're that play away from getting to the Super Bowl against Philadelphia and Minneapolis that year. You go from that defense to being a terrible defense. It's hard to sustain a good defense, but it can go the other way. You can turn your defense around pretty quickly. But give me the offense, give me the team that has a Joe Burrow central to everything, weapons galore, smart offensive minds. They're going to be held to defend. I mean, living here in Buffalo, New York, the Bills, they have so many problems against Cincinnati. Just the matchups that they pose are tough for the Bills, tough for any team. Like this is the only group that went into Arrowhead and won in the playoffs too. They're not afraid of any of that stuff. So we'll say it here. First week of April, the Cincinnati Bengals, yes, will vault themselves right back into Super Bowl contention. If you want to get the full story, it's live at the site for subscribers. GoLongTD.com. Some really great stuff from Zac Taylor into everything from Joe Burrow to what they're doing this offseason to kind of change things up. Maybe how they want to hit a little bit more, at least in those preseason games, and why Zac Taylor is kind of equipped to be the head coach of this all. And it was really interesting to hear how he said just being a quarterback his entire life prepares you for moments like this one. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'm going to be doing a podcast later today with Matthew Collar of Purple Insider. We'll try not to bring up Aaron Rodgers. That's always the goal, right? With these Substack lives and with these podcasts, like can we last an hour? It's not going to be easy with those Minnesota Vikings and the flirtation. It seemed like Kevin O'Connell Still was swiping away on Tinder. He's got JJ McCarthy. You've got your future. What are you doing? What are you doing, KOC? Flirting with this guy who you know is going to nuke a good thing there in Minnesota. My God, you just moved past Mike Zimmer. You got that stench out. You cleared the building of all that asbestos. You've got maybe the best thing going when it comes to culture, that word that you just hate to hear because it's said a million times over, but it means so much. The culture was terrible in Minnesota. He turned it around. They're in a great place. Guys love going to work. Kevin O'Connell may be the brightest offensive mind in football. Brian Flores may be, he's one of the greatest defensive coordinators in football. I never understood why Aaron Rodgers was even considered, but it sounds like they're ready to move ahead with the JJ McCarthy era. So we will stick to JJ McCarthy and everything Vikings players on that Vikings roster with Matthew Collar later. So yeah, keep it plugged to go along. Thank you so much, everyone.